certainly say something. Somebody should talk to. If you can. Yeah. Hello?
Hi, Commissioner Hammelberg. We're just going to wait another minute or so before we get started.
Just want to make sure I was connected. Thank you.
All is working.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. This is our regular commission meeting, special commission meeting, June 22nd at 6 PM. Sanjay, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor O'Happen,
Here,
Vice Mayor Samaria.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Hammelberg,
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
thank you. Commissioner Samaria, would you please do the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the Republic.
Madam Mayor, we're waiting for Paul Winklejohn to join us. He was just pulling in. And to move the meeting along, if you'd like to take public comment, and then we can circle back whenever he gets back into the room.
Okay. I'm going to open up the floor for public comments. They are 3 minutes. And if there is any bad language called cursing, then we are going to remove you. Please raise your hand if you want to speak. Dan? You want to start?
Yeah, I guess so. I just found out about 5 minutes ago, the action that y'all apparently took, or tentative action to eliminate the franchise fee from the waste fee. To me, this was not the way to go about that, reducing our waste fee, or at least keeping it level. Basically, you've reduced revenue to the village that, should the need arise, would have to be replaced by ad valorem tax increases. I just don't think that makes sense. You should maintain the franchise fee and the waste fee, and very seriously consider giving no increase to this contractor who bid a contract, from my understanding, with 10 years of no increases guaranteed to them. And at this point, they may have increased costs. I don't believe they have a full cost of living increased cost. I don't believe that they are certainly incurring some costs for fuel, but so is every single resident in the village of Biscayne Park that has to pay these fees and must adjust their standard of living accordingly to pay those extra fuel costs. Listen, if we're going to give cost of living increase and fuel increases every year of this contract, we're going to be at $3,000 a year. What trick will you pull out of your hats next year when the franchise fee situation is already gone? you're going to have to increase the fee if indeed costs go up. Not to mention the fact that personally, I don't believe the contractor is fulfilling his contract with regard to the type of collection that he's employing within the Village of Biscayne Park. So I don't have a lot to say. I wouldn't increase the fee. I would put the franchise fee back in place and still keep the fee level for this year. And let's see how they do for another year of contract, and let them come back to the well next year. I just think it's very too easy to do this, do an increase, which in effect you are doing because you're reducing revenue to the village coffers. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there anybody else want to speak? Are you, Louis, trying to
Yes.
tell us you want to speak? Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
With the ongoing recession that's happening now and only going to get worse, the cost of concrete, pavers, materials to do driveways is 36% more than it was 6 months ago. We need to pause the driveway ordinance way past the due date of January 23rd. We need a minimum of 36-month holdback on the ordinance. The ordinance cannot go forward. The interest rates are rising. People can't borrow they'll borrow at a higher rate to do these driveways. It's not necessary. It could be put on hold. Right now, it's financially, the whole country is in a very dangerous time. Gas is up, food is up, the cost of gravel is up, concrete, I called today. It's 36% more than it was 6 months ago. How could we expect the residents to put these $10,000, $5,000, $15,000 driveways in at this higher cost? It's not fair. When you guys passed the ordinance, we didn't have this huge inflation. We're going to hit 9%, 9.25%. The non-prime paper mortgage is 6.28 today. It's not going to get better. This 18 cents that Biden is proposing, he's going to fix everything. It's a baloney. It's nothing. Nothing's going to get fixed. The Publix is not reducing the prices tomorrow morning. The concrete companies doing driveways, they're not going to reduce the price because Biden reduced the gas by 18 cents. You need to be reasonable. You cannot financially force residents to do these driveways. You need to think about it. Maybe you could have another meeting on it. You could talk among yourselves, but Judy has a perfect driveway. Art has a perfect driveway. Virginia, you have one. Mac has a perfect driveway. I have a perfect driveway. We have them. Okay. A lot of people don't. We're fortunate enough that we're able to afford, and we did it. A lot of people can't. Now you're telling them they have to do it at 36% more than what it cost when we did it. It probably cost double. The guy next door just did one at $17,000. The guy has money, but what about the resident that can't afford it, can't get a loan? What are you going to do? Find them on January 23rd? The year that you gave them was fine. It was fair. Okay. But circumstances happen within that year. It's called
You have 20
recession.
seconds left, Louis. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's called recession. Recession. You need to have some compassion for these people that really cannot afford it. What's the big deal? At least if it's not 36 months, stall it for 24 months. 24 months and see what happens with the economy.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
I ask you, please, commissioners, mayor, Virginia, please postpone the ordinance for the new driveways. People need time.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak? Seeing none, I will close public comments and I will introduce Paul, revenue forecasting presentation. Paul?
Test, test. Great. Can you put your slides up? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Okay.
We got time to talk, it looks like. Thank you for having this on your agenda today. I always like to make presentations when there's good numbers to present. Today is
Please
certainly-
speak right into the
Yeah,
microphone and
it's-
loud.
Okay, how's that? A little better?
Good.
Today is definitely one of those days where we're happy to report the projections for the property value came up a little over 12%. That was what we were hoping for. And your trend line on your property value looks like all of South Florida, but particularly solid. That will generate the revenue that you guys will work with for your 2023 budget. The slide for fund balance is the next one. Okay, we can do that one. I'm sorry. I didn't remember the order you had them. Yeah, I just printed them. Yeah, so basically the math or the actual numbers shows you at your two most recent millage rates, your current 1.95 and your previous one at 9.7, the dollars that those property increases will generate for your ad valorem. The next slide with the reserves shows you, oh, we're gonna do this all the way. Sorry, I didn't number them either. Yeah, just go to the balance trend if you don't mind. Thank you, Mario. And this is the most important number. When our firm took over, it was right at the bottom of that green line. When it was at its lowest point, we had just spent short of $1 million, maybe even over $1 million on hurricane cleanup. You had a fund balance of 600,000, a little over 600,000, but actually you probably had less than $200,000 in your bank at one point that year. You were using reserves to pay operating costs. That's the worst it's ever going to be, I hope. Then here we are in 2022 with a $2.8 million reserve. So congratulations for you all. Those two numbers, one, ascending property values and increasing reserves, certainly show the correct fiscal picture for your community and correct in terms of healthy. If you have any questions on how this will affect the budget, obviously Mario will develop the key components to your 2023 budget, but I would call today sort of the financial kickoff point. I did want to mention one more number. You, in your operating expenses, operate on a 52% labor cost. So that means that your funds that are in essence flexible are contractual after that or operational costs. It's about normal for this type of village or smaller incorporated municipalities. But just keep that in mind that your biggest investment is people. We also put in here the solid waste franchise. Thanks for going to that. I think you've already talked about it you finished that at the prior meeting. I dropped off before. You did approve that last time or no? Okay. Either way, whatever you choose to do, your franchise fee can be used to cover these costs. The gentleman on the earlier call, had an opinion. We can talk about that if you need to. The last piece of this is the capital. The thing you're also doing differently and better is reinvesting in your physical infrastructure. That's a net gain. That's spending money in yourselves, so you actually create better value. So as a finance person, that's a good way to put the money. You don't earn interest, right?
Correct. Madam Mayor, so a couple caveats that I wanted to point out. The estimate from the county right now, as of June 1st, is that property values increase from 270 million up to 304. That 304 million is again an estimate. We won't have the final number from the county until July 1st, which is why on your agenda there's only one resolution for non-ad valorem and not to set the max millage. However, I wanted to be able to present some of these numbers so that the commission can start understanding what this means with regards to revenue. And so when you're looking at the side in front of you, we're talking about if we were to stay at a 9.5 millage, just to give you a comparable, it's about $305,000 of additional revenue that we're getting. If you were to look at the prior year, which was a 9.7, it's an additional $57,000 on top of the 305,000. So each point of a millage equates to about $28,000, close to $29,000. And so I wanted to give the commission this quick information so that you can start visualizing what kind of revenue this is talking about. One of the reasons why, when you're looking at, and we had this discussion, and it leads into the next resolution. When we had the discussion last month, or earlier this month, I'm sorry, where looking at the CPI as indicated by the U.S. Treasury for garbage, that's up about almost 5%. Fuel has almost doubled by this point of what is paying. So we were looking at ways, and it would have definitely come up for an increase in the contract. They're allowed to make that request after the year. So it was something for the commission to consider. However, I thought it was prudent to try to keep the rate as flat as possible for the residents. And so looking at how this can keep flat, yes, we're looking at reducing overall net revenue from sanitation into the sanitation fund. However, if you look, we're still talking about an increase in revenue, and I think we're in a good position to be able to do that this year and to keep it as flat as possible for residents. As you're looking through these documents, I think we're in really good position right now. Not only do we have additional revenue coming in, and it might, the estimate, instead of it being 304 million, it might go up. Last year, the June 1st estimate was for 269 million, and it went up to 270.1. So there's a possibility that can go up from 304. As we look at not only the increases to the required services, the personnel costs, and everything that we'll be bringing in July, I think we have some wiggle room to be able to further other projects and things that we had been talking about over the past 12 months, and we'll continue to talk about during this budget season. And again, just to reiterate, something that is definitely different from the year before, we received $425,000 that the village had not received before. We received a grant for $85,000. There's zero matching funds to that. 85 that we're receiving for that grant. Once that study is completed, that can help position the village to now go after other grants for design and construction, especially as it comes to stormwater management funds. This year, the governor gave us a state appropriation of 350. The senator and the senators and the House of Representatives, they fought to keep our appropriation within the budget, and it was not vetoed. I think we did things the right way to keep all those fundings intact within the state budget. That has a matching portion, which is matched through CITT funds, which that all goes into that infrastructure projects that we have. $980,000 worth of projects that we have identified, the first phase, which is five areas. And then we also have a DOT transit development grant for 50,000 that is also matched by CITT for the freebie, which will carry over for several years and be able to access the other CITT funds that goes into the infrastructure work. So again, I wanted to kind of put this on your radar, show where we are with the fund balance and what this kind of sort of means. We'll go into much greater detail of percentages of what each individual houses on average could pay, just like we did percentage of the taxes that comes into Biscayne Park compared to the school board and Miami-Dade County, as well as the other institutions that receive from property taxes. And then the money that we get as a village, how is that split up? So we'll go into that during the July workshop. But I wanted to point you because I think an initial, and I know that you all might have questions, and I know Paul's here, so I apologize for being a little long-winded. But I know if we can start kind of identifying ranges for the millage as I prepare the budget, I'd like to hear at least a little bit of feedback. So as I prepare the budget and I can see where we're kind of working towards so that we can have a productive meeting come July. If there's any questions from the commission, I know Paul's available, I'm available, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Is there any questions for Paul by the commissioners?
I have a couple of things, but I'll, since Art and
ahead.
Judy aren't here, I'll defer to them if they have anything they want to ask first.
I'm okay.
So it's okay too. Okay. Hi, Paul. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Excellent, sir.
And
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. And I know this is kind of like a little capsule and we're going to see a whole lot more from you. That's for the July 28th budget hearing, right?
Correct.
Okay, then a couple of quick things. Can you explain to us, for everyone's benefit, just in a capsule summary, how the taxable values are calculated and where this big significant increase, you're anticipating 12.5% that you've heard from the county. How is that calculated and
The property appraiser develops that through a formula of actual sales and deed changes, transfers, refinancing, all of those processes force a new value to show up in their records. And they literally just add it all up.
and send it to you? Send it to
Yeah,
us?
it's available. Yep.
Okay, so it's based on actual activity here in Biscayne Park.
Right. The Dade County uses a market value.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. I mean, I knew it was based on what's really happening, but I wanted to know how specific it was to Biscayne
I
Park.
wouldn't look up your value on Zillow, but you can look up your
will, yeah,
value
exactly.
on,
It's fun to
property
look, it's fun
appraiser's
to look
site.
at the Zillow number though.
it's scary and fun.
Remind us what percentage of our total revenue is represented by this number?
Well, your non-ad valorem generates, I think 75 or 80% of your
I thought it was
revenue.
like three
You
quarters.
know, if you start bringing in the solid waste fund and CITT fund, those look like large numbers, but they're always tied to, you know, obviously an expense.
Right.
So they kind of, if you pull those out, it's 85%.
So at the July 28th meeting, we'll see all of the revenue.
Right.
numbers?
We'll do the revenue sharing projection. You remember this conversation two or 3 years ago when the revenue projections for the tax share was, who knew what it was going to look like. And we were seeing in about this time in 2020, you know, 30% recovery of that number. And fortunately, it was in the 60% range. So we had to budget as though it was a phantom ghost. This year, we're going to know that number. So you'll get all of that. We'll be able to hit a projection. You know, we get a projection late July from the state. So you'll see that revenue, not as meaningful as that's about 10% of your ad valorem compared to your ad valorem.
Mhm.
And some of the state revenue.
Yeah,
Commissioner
state revenue, all the revenue sharing
They're-
accounts, I lump them together.
Sometimes those numbers trickle in. So as we get them in preparation, just like what we did last year, as we get them for whichever upcoming budget meeting we have, we'll update those numbers.
So the
for-
newest numbers are always slotted in.
Correct.
Okay, I ask as a reminder for me and also for residents who are listening tonight or who I think a lot of people watch on YouTube later, for them to not look at this number and think that's our total revenue because this is part of our revenue stream.
Right. It's the one that starts the millage discussion.
Okay, very good. Last year you did a really nice job. It was you and Mario, I think, together, staff and you put together that nice presentation that broke down how what our tax dollar looks like. Mario, and I think you just said we're going to be seeing that again this year.
Yeah, that's page 2 of the budget,
Yeah.
basically. Yep.
And last year, I believe, or I think for the past 2 years, I just want to make sure we're going to see the figures you provided where you showed us for every 0.1 of a millage change,
Right.
what that represented for a home of a taxable value of a certain amount with a single homestead, I think is how you did it. And it was
Perfect.
a
Yep,
really-
the standard.
Yeah.
Yep.
that was a really handy thing for us to see, because when we consider
Yeah,
changes
conceptualized.
to the millage rate, that makes it all very real, so these big numbers become very firmly attached to a regular homeowner here in the
Right.
village.
It's good to think of it like the actual person writing the check.
Exactly. And this year, we're going to be looking at something that's a little bit different, because our taxable value went up so much because of these homes that are selling at higher rates, and they all got reset, and they're going to be paying the same rate on a much higher value. So I think it's important for us to
Right.
keep in mind what some of the longer term residents, how it impacts them, and people, so we can see homes at different values and how it impacts them.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
there's
so
the
that'll-
homestead component, all that.
All
It-
of that,
It
I know
blends, but yeah,
I know
it's
it's a moving
interesting.
target,
Yep.
but it's just, if there's something for us to look at, it's very helpful, because it makes it all very real to us, because the big number then becomes something very specific to a home, to a property, and then you look at that on an annual basis, and then you divide it by 12, and all of a sudden you're seeing how much it really is a month, of how much of a difference it is per month. And for people who pay quarterly, they can also anticipate how the change would look quarterly.
Right. And you'll see the rollback rate as well.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's what that's intended for, is to show people what the actual assessment, or excuse me, the
Awesome.
non-born.
That's just really helpful, because
Yep.
the first time I went through this process as a commissioner, we didn't have that. And it was really like trying to figure it out as you go. And I remember we had this conversation that year.
Can we
then-
move this on?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can we move this on?
I think we're actually conducting a meeting here. Is that Commissioner Hammelberg?
Yeah, but we're just talking and talking and talking.
Okay, I'm asking questions about what we're
We're
doing with
asking
our tax and budget.
the
So I have
commissioners-
one more, Judy, if you don't mind. I mean, listen in, you might learn something here. So my last question is for, I guess, more for Mario. Mario, Dan Keys brings up a point, and you and I discussed it today, the franchise fee and us losing if we give up the franchise fee for 1 year, we wouldn't be making a decision to forego it forever moving forward in this contract. It would be on a 1-year basis, right?
Correct.
Can you explain how where the loss of revenue is shown in our budget, and how that would impact us? Because I mean, it is a loss of revenue in one part of the budget. So can you explain where that is, and how we would make up that difference?
Sure. That is showcased in the sanitation fund. And so we would not see that revenue come in. There's always transfers in and out between general and the various funds, whether it's the building or sanitation. So we wouldn't be seeing the franchise fee revenue coming in on the sanitation fund. Again, I think this is a good year, that if we're going to waive it in lieu of the increase with CPI and the fuel surcharge and all, as we've been talking about, I think this is a good year, because we have that cushion that we've seen with the property values going as high as they have, and the reserves that we have. So I think we're able to absorb that in a way that I think is fair for residents and for the contractor.
So in other words, it's not costing us more money, we're losing revenue. Those two things are different, two ways of saying the same thing. But some of the things that we pay for that, you're saying will come out of the general fund. So in other words, we'll budget for that in this budget. It's not going to come out of our reserves.
No, we will continue to budget the same way.
We would
were.
budget the same way, and we would cover it in the budget. We just would.
Yeah, we're still
without
seeing.
having the benefit of that revenue source on the top number.
Correct. At a 9.5 millage, as I'm showing on the screen, we're still realizing a $305,000 increase in revenue.
Okay, so we're just going to forego, if we do this, we're going to forego some revenue and absorb it elsewhere in our budget. And we're doing that so we can keep the cost of solid waste exactly where it is for the past year. We'll just roll over that cost for 1 more year, but it's not a permanent change. We will discuss this again next year.
Correct. Next year, this is only for 1 year. It's not a permanent for the entire length of the contract. And the commission will, the contract allows for me to even try to negotiate down if I see that the CPI has gone down. And also I bring that back to the commission, usually in June, as July is the new contract anniversary date.
And remind us what the amount of that franchise fee is.
It's 11%. So it comes out to, I think it's like 100,000.
So right at about 100,000.
About 100,000.
Okay, can then
Those
Commissioner,
are all my questions. Thanks,
John.
Judy, for listening in.
Commissioner
I-
Hammelberg, do you wish to ask any questions of Paul?
No, I fully understand what he's talking about, and I fully understand that he's going to bring back to us, like he did last year in July's meeting, what we need.
Okay,
Why did you
Commissioner
repeat it?
Gonzalez, do you have any questions for Paul?
Yeah, Paul, can I ask you a quick question? When you're doing these estimates, as you know, a lot of the people that move inside of Florida move their what do you call it?
Homestead.
Their homestead. Yeah, so their homestead exemption, right?
Portability,
So,
yeah.
yeah, portability. So when you're doing these estimates, do you take that into account? Because I know when I moved here, I ported my taxes from Miami Beach over here. And that was a significant savings. So I'm just curious if you're doing that, you're taking that into consideration when you're doing these estimates.
Right. When the property appraiser produces their number, I can't take credit for it. They actually do it. I wouldn't want to do it, but their system is a cycle. Right around about a month ago, they closed out all of their value adjustment boards, which is the last adjustment. And don't forget, ad valorem taxes happened a year ago.
Mhm.
So they're not real time. They're last year's results.
Sure.
So all of those relocations, all of the homestead, no homestead, portability, all of that is calculated out after the end of the tax year, and they have a final number. And they actually give us an estimate on the property value, and they already have the formula of who's going to pay what. So once they get those two numbers, they crunch it up. So it's a real number. The only thing that's projected is the actual value.
Mhm.
They give us two numbers in July. They give us a fine-tuned projection, but they also give us the final number from last year.
Right.
So there's a couple of adjustments,
Okay. Okay.
and that can be very small. One of the reasons why we use the 95%
Mhm.
revenue calculation on our top line
Mhm.
is for that exact reason.
Got you. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay,
The only
Vice
question,
Mayor
yeah, the only
Vice
question,
Maria?
the only question I have.
I hear his voice, but I can't see him through all the walls. Sorry.
No, it's just with the franchise fees that we're weaving, doesn't cost the residents any, he explained it good, but I just want to be sure, perfectly clear. By waiving the franchise fees, we don't lose, we lose income, but it doesn't cost the residents any. Could you explain a little bit more? Because I'm trying to figure out why we would waive the franchise fee.
Well, you have three choices. You can increase your revenue to meet the demands of the contractor. You could not pay the contractor, which has a whole laundry list of behavioral issues that you don't want, which you collectively agreed you don't want, I understand. So the two things you don't want to do is not help the contractor or raise fees. So you got to take it from somewhere. There's two places you can take it from. You can, without raising the rate, right? You can take it from the franchise fee, which is very clean because it's the exact amount of money. It's waivable. It's a single act. The other way you could do it, and this is so messy, it would ruin the whole picture of the village, is reduce the overhead cost that the general fund charges solid waste for staff time. That's what, because solid waste doesn't have any people on it, but it charges for the people from one fund to the other. And they're both fairly similar numbers, but what you don't want to do, and this is my advice, was to not use that number because your whole personnel costs would get blurred. And you don't want to do that going into a budget cycle. So it's really clean. It gives you a really clear picture of what money you used, so nobody will dispute it, or misunderstand, or it doesn't distort other topics. It's very clean and very clear. That's ideal when you're going to do a temporary adjustment to your program.
Okay.
So I love it. If you're going to do it that way, great. That's
Are we going to have to
healthiest.
come up with $100,000 in our
Yeah, see, that's
budget?
what I'm trying to
Make
figure
up
out.
that $100,000.
Yeah, because
that
that's the franchise fee or the admin overhead are both positives into your general fund. The general fund is built where these numbers are quite easily absorbed. I don't want to sound light about it, but it's truthful. You're going to make all those calls. You have the steering wheel, so easy
As
to
it
do.
is, just so we're clear, $100,000 is about 3% of our annual budget.
Okay.
Okay, is that all the questions for Paul?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you all.
Is there any of the commissioners want to ask the public comments, answer the public comments? Commissioner Kennedy, do you want to answer?
Yeah, to the comment about driveways, without getting into the weeds on that, I just want to make clear to anyone who's listening that we passed an ordinance that made some changes, most of them very minor, to the existing driveway ordinance. We did not write a driveway ordinance for the first time for this village. We have always required driveways to be located on private property. This is nothing new. We looked into the ordinance and we made some changes that we thought needed to be made about some materials and some sizes and things like that. But requiring a driveway is not new in Biscayne Park. To anyone who's listening, some of that information may not have sounded exactly accurate.
Okay, any other answers for comments? There were two speakers. Commissioner Hammelberg, do you have any comments for both speakers?
No, I would reiterate that this is not a new ordinance on driveways. We cleaned it up a little bit, added a few things to it, but people who don't have driveways and don't have to code driveways have had problems and have known they've had problems for years, and they need to deal with it. And I mean, I guess if there's a serious problem, we can address it at a later date, but we're still got 6 more months, and I don't know that we need to be addressing it. And it really has nothing to do with the budget type meeting that we're doing today anyways. And as far as the waste goes, I fully understand that the cost of gas has gone sky high, and they have a right to ask for it. It's in the contract. And however, our people feel we need to do it to make it right for us and them, that's fine.
Can we move this along, please?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gonzalez, do you have any answers to our public comments?
No,
We had-
ma'am. No, I think we've got plenty of answers.
Okay, Commissioner Vice Mayor.
I think the questions, I was just asking in reference to Dan Key's questions, but I think the city manager answered that, so I have no other questions.
No, you don't. There's nothing to vote on. You're moving here. Ma'am, there's no vote on the presentation. It was just informational.
This is the, oh, okay.
Resolution.
Would you please read the resolution 2022-32.
Thank you, Mayor. A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, relating to the collection and disposal of solid waste within the village for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Establishing the estimated assessment rate for solid waste service against assessed property located within the Village of Biscayne Park for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2023, directing the preparation of an assessment roll, providing for a public hearing and notice thereof, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Made by Commissioner Hammelberg and seconded by Vice Mayor Samaria. Is there any
Madam Mayor.
discussion?
Madam Mayor, if I may, again, this is to set the non-ad valorem fee, which will be part of the trim notices that will be mailed out later this summer. There's a deadline as to when each municipality has to submit, which is why we're meeting today to do that. This is a $0 change for residential units from fiscal year 21-22 through 22-23. It keeps the rate the same as it would be currently.
Yeah, but what is the financial impact, Mario, just so everybody's clear on the village?
Nothing changes with setting the fee at $659. I think it's $659.49 for the year. So we have approximately $811,000 that would come into the village to oversee, through the sanitation fund, to oversee the contract and the various other operations that are paid through sanitation.
Yeah, but I mean by waiving the 11%.
This is not waiving the franchise fee at all. This is just setting the rate for the year.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Well, if I can tag on to that, so it's not, it's keeping the same rate, Art, but what he said, if I understand what you're saying, Mario, it's not part of this that we're about to vote on now, but it is related in that what we're saying is we're not going to increase their rate. We're going to waive the fee that they pay us back. So yes, Art, in essence, there
No.
is a change, to
There-
the village, but it's not represented here in this. It's represented outside of this.
Those are,
That $100,000 amount.
although related, they're separate, Commissioner. So this is just setting the rate for garbage collection. The commission in July, during their commission meeting, will have the contract amendment, which will allow for the franchise fee to be waived in order to make up for the CPI and the fuel surcharge. So you'll see that on the July 12th. However, the commission, although I do not recommend it, can turn that down, and we would continue with operations as is, setting the fee for collection services.
Mario, we're not making all the decisions tonight. Tonight, we're
No.
just setting the fee that residents will pay. It's kind of, it's a little awkward because it's part of it tonight and then part of it happens a separate time, and I understand that's how it works. But we're just setting the fee that residents will pay tonight. Next month, having set that, we will then discuss what we're going to do about the vendor who's asking for a raise and a surcharge. We discussed it once, but next time it will come to us in the form of a resolution.
Correct.
And we'll actually vote on it. So the conversation's not over in regards to how we want to handle the vendor. Right now, we're just locking down with
What,
we're going to charge the residents, but it does impact that certainly because we've locked it down and now we can't change it. This would be our final decision on this, correct? Or is this just our first?
this is what we would have to report to the county. They would then send this amount as part of the trim, which then gets formally adopted by the commission in the September public hearings.
as
Yeah,
part of the
but-
ordinance?
Yeah, but it would, the rate would not change based on what we're discussing. What would,
You can always go lower, but you can't go
No.
higher.
I understand, but what's going to change, right, is that we are eventually, not today, but eventually going to forfeit our 11% or 10% or 11%. The franchise fees, right? That's where we're going to go. Not today, but in the near future,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
So my question is, what does that represent to us as a village?
That's about $100,000, sir. And we have the capacity this year within the general funds to be able to absorb any type of hit, which is why it was recommended last commission meeting.
When you say absorb it in the general fund, you mean this year? Do you mean this fiscal year's general fund? We can absorb it in this fiscal year's
No, sir.
general fund?
For fiscal year 22,
Okay, just want to
23.
make sure you're clear. 'Cause you said this year, and I thought, oh, is he going to pay for it like now out of this year's budget somehow?
No.
Okay. So
No.
at a fiscal 23's budget, it'll pay. So in other words, we have to come up with there's going to be $100,000 in there that we've got to pay out of our money as opposed to the fee that they normally paid us every year.
Understood. Okay.
But tonight, we're just setting this, but the conversation continues next month. We finish all of that. Tonight, we're just setting the amount that the residents pay, but it certainly does have an impact on that conversation next month because,
Yeah.
then we're going to discuss what we pay them, this fuel that they want. If we remove the franchise fee, I mean, there's different ways we can do it, or we could do nothing at all. It's going to be a bigger conversation next month, right, Mario? Tonight, we're just locking down this portion of it so they can get numbers back to Paul for what we have to do in July.
Okay.
And to report to
Understood.
the county, correct.
Understood. Okay.
Fine.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the resolution?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So, and just to really boil it down, if we pass this tonight, we can't go any higher, which means either we're going to have to, our options in July will be to waive the franchise fee and that deal that we had talked about with the vendor, or renegotiate all of that, or just say no to them. Just saying, we have the option of saying no to the different things they asked us for. We're not required to do any of that per our contract with them, right?
No, the commission can vote not to do anything, although, again, I wouldn't recommend it as I potentially could impact service.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I just want to look all of our options from kind of one extreme to the other. Okay, so all the
The only
cards are
thing-
still on the table.
The only card that is no longer on the table is increasing the fee to accommodate the increase in the contract request.
So then that means the residents won't be paying for whatever extra the village would have to come up with it on its own outside of the solid waste fee. Yeah, we'd have to come up with it one way or the other. I get it. Got it.
Vote on that. All in favor of resolution 2022-32? Signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Madam Mayor, if I may, before adjournment, there's just two things I wanted to bring up with the commission since you all are here, and they'll be relatively quick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As we saw earlier, our lobbyists and I have worked very diligently this past year to be able to obtain state funds. David Caserta has sent me an email with another opportunity. Governor DeSantis and the Florida House during the budget session allocated $175 million for non-reoccurring funding for local governments, education entities, and private operated programs to support local initiatives. In other words, they've created a grant within the state budget of $175 million for non-reoccurring projects that are one-offs. The deadline for the application is July 15th. What I would like to recommend, if it's okay with the commission, and I know there's really no background, but I did this right before we walked in. I'd like to make an application for $450,000 towards the state, where that money could be used for the Ed Burke master plan. That would address all of the parking recommendations that we initially heard from Calvin Giordano in the June meeting, which comes up to about $213,000. We're looking at trying to get grants or find money for equipment replacement. Also in the tot lot, redoing the floors. We're estimating that might be between everything about $75,000. We've also tried in the past, and the governor has vetoed trying to purchase a generator for emergency purposes over at the rec center, where it could be tied into natural gas to continue operations. So putting all of that together, I think $450,000 is a reasonable amount that we can request, and that would take care of the majority of the things that we have talked about within the park. It won't forbid us or preclude us, better said, from going for other grants that are park related, and we'll continue to work on that. But I think this is a one-time opportunity that we have in front of us. It's called the local support grant request that we can put for something. And these are things that we can point towards that we're ready to move forward, which I think will look good for the village. So the request is, all I need is just general consensus to allow me to apply for a $450,000 grant to make improvements, various improvements at the park through this grant.
You have my consensus.
Absolutely, you got mine. And do we know what time frame we will be hearing from them, or it's still up in the air?
The deadline to apply.
Deadline for applications is July 15th, and then the appropriation committee will then take a look, and then they'll give their final approval on submissions after that. But there's no timeline for they rush us, but they don't have the timeline to come back. So we'll keep our eye on it, but I wanted to make sure I had the commission's blessing to apply before doing anything.
Fabulous. Thank
idea.
you.
Can I ask a question, Mario? The $213,000 number that you put for the rec center, I'm not going to pull that up right now. Is what all did that include for the rec center?
That was all the parking,
And the asphalt that we discussed, that porous
yeah.
asphalt?
right, for all four
four sides?
sides. Yes.
Did it include the sidewalks that have to be moved?
That was the general estimate that Calvin
I don't think
Giordano.
that number
for
included
that
moving
area.
sidewalks. I think it was only for parking. So you might want to look at that and get a quick estimate, because to do the parking, they suggested, I think, if I'm.
In some areas, we would have to move.
Sidewalks on
yeah.
two sides would have to be moved. So you may want to try to figure out some costs for sidewalks to be done as
Are we
well.
okay with saying 500,000 then?
Yeah, I don't know. I have
Yeah,
no
I
idea.
mean,
what
I'll
sidewalk-
double
I'm just-
check
I'm just-
the
I'm just
estimate.
thinking out
but-
loud here.
For that, if we get the grant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And do you have to, for these grants, do they sometimes ask you to show that you're like really ready to, like, shovels and grounds, you're ready to go, you've done your pricing? And because we, for what you just listed, we kind of are at that point, aren't we?
we're very close to that point. Yes. Sometimes they ask for documentation for the studies or what was given at public meetings and so forth. So yes, we are moving these projects along, and I think because it's just for the most part asphalt and parking, we can move that forward very quickly, and it's not something that requires large engineering studies like stormwater or something like that. Takes several years just to get to the construction phase.
Almost cosmetic. I mean, I know it's not.
Yeah,
because
it's more of a
the
cosmetic.
other thing that immediately popped into my mind was the foundation is working on that project to create like a reading room space inside and some other
Mhm.
flexible use space for kids. Might that be something we could toss in here? And when you apply for things, is it typical that you apply for more than you really need and anticipate that do you get a yes or a no, or do they come back and say, can't give you
They
4,
usually
we'll give you
ask.
3?
They usually ask for where you're getting your estimates from, but all purposes, they can reduce, we're asking for an amount,
Right.
but they can reduce because they try to give it based on population and what's being put in and what initiatives and things like that.
I think
So
we'll
we
go
can-
over it if we get that
And then
grant.
the last item is
I just wanted to see,
working,
Vice Mayor Kennedy, Vice Mayor Samaria, do you have any comment on that?
No, wait until it comes up.
and the last announcement is several months ago, the commission gave me direction to hold a legislative workshop over the summer to discuss how the process works when requesting state appropriations and things like that, and how bills are brought to the South. Speaking with David Concerto, who would lead our workshop, he's available on August 6th. And so I just wanted to see, which is a Saturday. So I just wanted to see the commission's availability so that we can have that workshop on Saturday, August 6th.
I'm good.
I'm available.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'll be here.
Hallberg.
I'm available.
Okay.
That would be a daytime thing, Mario? Like a
Yes.
or like-
Yeah, we'll probably start about 10 a.m. or so. Coffee, some bagels and stuff. We'll have that conversation.
And that's when we should have our idea, our suggestions, ideas, desires ready, and that's going to be a discussion on that as well. It's not just a primer on how this is done at the state level, but we were going to discuss with him what he thinks is available for us that we might go after, and what we would be.
We'll be-
requesting as well.
Yeah, we'll be able to tell you. I mean, I think that's too early to really be able to dictate what's going on at the state level and what bills and things like that, and where some of the funding priorities will be for the legislative body. But we'll get together, we'll start talking, and then we'll have a general idea. And we'll once we go forward, or if we see that something shifts after our conversation, we can always come back at a later meeting and be able to talk about it before the final application goes to the state. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Perfect.
Okay. I take a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
A
Vice
second.
Mayor Made a motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Hammelberg. Was that you?
Doesn't charge extra.
Yes.
Okay. All in
Thank you,
favor,
Mari.
say aye.
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 All opposed?
everyone.
The ayes have it.